All right, good evening, everyone. It's 6 o'clock. Welcome to the Commission's monthly open meeting. I'll call the March 22nd, 2022 meeting of the City of San Diego's Commission on Police Practices to order. First up, I will read the purpose of the Commission on Police Practices for anyone who's new. The purpose of the Commission on Police Practices is to provide an independent investigation of officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths and an unbiased evaluation of all complaints against San Diego Police Department and its personnel in a process that will be transparent and accountable to the community. The Commission will also evaluate and review SDPD policies, practices, training, and protocols, and represent the community in making recommendations for changes. The mission of the Commission is to hold law enforcement accountable to the community and to increase community trust in law enforcement, resulting in increased safety for both the community and law enforcement. And with that, I will turn it over to Interim Executive Director Charmaine Mosley for roll call.
You're muted, Charmaine.
I thought I was saying something. Chair Hilpert.
I'm here.
Commissioner Case.
Here.
Commissioner Fitch.
Here.
Commissioner Holtrop.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Workman.
Here.
Commissioner Dent.
Here.
Commissioner Harrington and Commissioner Smith, they are both excused. Commissioner Clark.
Here.
Commissioner Shea.
Here.
Commissioner Vaughn.
Present.
Commissioner Dabba Griffin is also excused. Commissioner Spruce.
Here.
Christopher Pink is excused. That completes the roll call.
All right, thank you. And then moving on to the approval of the meeting minutes from our open session of February 22nd. Does anyone have any revisions or corrections to the minutes? And if not, can I get a motion to approve? Don't everyone jump at once.
I move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Robin. May I get a second?
Second.
Second by Marty. Charmaine, can you do a vote, please?
Commissioner Case.
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn. Commissioner Vaughn. Is she having issues unmuting?
She's muted, but she's still here. There we go.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Fitch.
Abstain, I wasn't in attendance.
Commissioner Holtrop.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Abstain, same reason as Poppy.
Commissioner Workman.
Yes.
Commissioner Dent.
Yes.
Commissioner Spruce.
Yes.
Commissioner Shea.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Chair Hilpert.
I'll vote yes.
Motion passes. The vote is 9-0, 2 abstentions.
All right. And I don't believe we have any, but is there any non-agenda public comment?
No public comment received.
Then for our 2 attendees, if you do have non-agenda public comment, go ahead and raise your hand and we can call on you. And not seeing anything, I will move forward. So the first items we have is unfinished business. Kind of the standard thing we've been doing every month. We do have quite a backload of cases. So one of the things we're trying to figure out is the commission meetings for the month of April. We're trying to obviously be respectful for everyone's time. Again, we all are volunteers. For the public who might be watching, we've been basically meeting almost every week instead of bi-weekly. We didn't meet today actually because we didn't have cases ready for review, but we'll get into it a little bit later, but we want to check with all the teams to see how many cases might be coming down the pipeline ready for the commission to review. So once we go over that later today, we'll probably send out a doodle poll for the month of April to kind of see where everyone's availability is, and then we can try to get all those scheduled out. For case review status, again, we'll probably be going into a little bit more detail on that. There is one thing that Patrick had made a recommendation on, and we discussed it at the transition committee meeting last Friday. So we're going to be discussing that a little bit later, but the idea is to try to help simplify things. If there's a case that Internal Affairs has presented to the commission and the team reviews it, and we basically agree that there are no sustained findings, there's nothing that's missing, and that basically there's no changes, instead of us writing up our whole report that basically repeats exactly what Internal Affairs has already said, if we are in agreement, we'd basically just kind of create a memo that says we concur with Internal Affairs, and then we'll take that to the commission, have the commission vote on it. Patrick can go into a little bit more detail when we pick up on that a little bit later. But the idea is that should hopefully help streamline a little bit. Obviously, if the team looks at it for any reason, they have concerns, questions, then that would not apply. It's just something that if everything in that case looks on the up and up, everything's good, the commission agrees with Internal Affairs, the idea is that it would help us streamline it and get some cases completed a little bit quicker. The other items for evaluation discipline, typically what I do is usually every month or so, I'll go and look through all the cases and I'll remind the teams if there's cases that are ready for us to review, so they can review the discipline, then we can present that to the commission. If just as a reminder for anyone, if you do have a case where the discipline is not something that you agree with, you do have the ability to meet with the captain who issued that discipline to discuss that. Unfortunately, in the way it currently stands, by the time we get that memo, discipline's already been issued. So if we disagree with the discipline, we can't change it, but we can at least talk to the captain that issued it and let them know that we disagree and why we disagree. Remote access. I know this is something that some people love, some people hate. The one thing that I've kind of noticed is I think since we've moved to remote access, although it's supposed to be a little bit more helpful, because we don't have set hours like we used to have where you go into Internal Affairs to review cases. I think that's part of the reason why some of our case review is slowing down a little bit. I think we just need to make sure that we're spending the time that we can to be able to do the case review just like we did when we were actually physically going into Internal Affairs. That's just my guess. I typically try to look at cases usually after I get home from work or after I have dinner. But I know everyone has different schedules. So I mean, obviously do what works best for your calendars, but as everyone here knows, we're drowning in cases. So we're just trying to make sure that we can kind of go through them as diligently and quickly as possible. Do you have any questions on that? Okay. Dovetailing that, as I usually say every week or every month rather, Internal Affairs does still allow us to go in on weekends. If you want to make some time to go in on weekends to schedule time to physically go in there, review cases, listen to audio interviews, anything like that, you can send an email to Detective Amato and she can get a schedule for that. I know Nancy goes in, I think almost every weekend. And I know when I've gone in the past, she usually has some baked goods there, which I haven't had in quite a while. So you wouldn't be alone. But if we do make appointments to go in there and for some reason, our schedules change, please definitely make sure to let Internal Affairs know. I would say at least a day in advance, just so they can let whoever is going to be there, let them know that they don't need to be there, because we don't want people to be showing up on overtime if they're not going to be there for us, if they don't need to be there for us, rather. Any questions on that? All right, moving on to new business. There's a couple things we have here. Nothing I hear I think is too crazy, but we wanted to make a proposed amendment, and we talked about this when we had our city council meetings. We want to amend the initial implementation ordinance that created the Office of the Commission on Police Practices to basically say that the commission needs to be included and be part of the process for selecting the executive director. So I can let Doug touch base on that. We have had conversations with all the city council members, including the mayor. We had the meeting with the mayor last week. And with that, we've pretty much explained, why we feel this is important. The city council does have the ability per the charter to appoint the executive director, but the commission basically could fire them if they work at the will and direction of the commission. So what we don't want is, and not that this would happen, but we don't want the city council to potentially hire somebody that the commission, for example, cannot work with or doesn't want to work with, or they don't agree with the philosophy that we're trying to do. So they appoint them, and then 2-3 days later, a week later, a month later, we fire them and we have to start the whole process over. That wouldn't look good for us, wouldn't look good for the city council. We've shared that with all the city council members. And I think in general, they're pretty much in agreement. So the idea is we're proposing that we would be part of that process, and we would essentially recommend, 4 or so candidates to the city council. We'd kind of list what their pros and cons are, their strengths and weaknesses, and then they would be able to make the decision on who they wanted to hire. Doug, do you want to chime in on anything else on that?
Yeah. Excuse me. Oh, can you? If you could scroll down, and I'll look at it on my bigger screen, to the page that says, excuse me, page that says draft a selection process for the executive director at the top. It's the next page. There you go. No, there you go. Whoops, we went too far. Back up a little bit. Here, that page right there. Okay. And so basically what I'm proposing is that we recommend to the city council that they add one sentence to the municipal code section that created the office of the Commission on Police Practices, which is separate from the implementation ordinance. So what I have here is item B, which talks about the hiring of the executive director. And I want to add the sentence that reads, it's underlined, that the commission shall adopt operating procedures to be approved by the council to provide for the commission and community input into the selection process. Now, it's my understanding when they had the meeting with the council president pro tem, Monica Montgomery Stepp, she indicated that it wasn't necessary to add this sentence in order to have an opportunity for commission input, but I think that it's important to add so that it's clear in the ordinance that that's an expectation. And so my recommendation is we send this letter to the city council asking them to amend the ordinance to include that section. Then if you scroll down further on that same page, it talks about the process that we have discussed of how that process would work. This would not be part of the ordinance. The ordinance would simply authorize the creation of a operating procedure, and what's listed here are what we suggest that might be included in such an operating procedure. And so the first one is that we would contract with an executive search firm that would select the top approximately 5 candidates. And then the commission would select approximately 10 community organizations that would select a representative to serve on a community panel. And the panelists would be required to sign a confidentiality agreement so that the applicants would not have it be made public that they're looking for another job, at least at this point in the process. And then the top candidates selected by the executive search firm would the finalists make a presentation to this community panel, and the community panel would have an opportunity to ask questions. And then at the end, they would provide feedback via a form that would be developed by Human Resources. And we repeat the process with the commission itself so that all the commissioners would get a chance to meet the finalist. Then there would be a nominations committee that would consist of the commission's cabinet and a community representative selected by the commission, and they would interview the candidates, and they would also read the feedback received from the 2 panels, and would recommend the top 3 candidates to the city council and write a memorandum that lists the strengths and weaknesses of the 3 candidates, and a representative from the Human Resources would serve as a consultant to the nominations committee. And then the city council would then interview those nominees in closed session and approve the appointment in open sessions. That's how we envision that the process would work. And again, that would be subject to approval by the city council. But at this point in the process, we simply are asking the city council to add that one sentence amendment to the ordinance that specifies that this is the process, or that specifies that there will be a process identified. And so I would make that motion.
With that, I'll open up to any questions or comments or discussion from the commission. Oops. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'm going to guess there's no questions. All right, with that, we have, I think, Doug, did you want to officially make the motion yourself?
I did, and somebody needs to second it.
I'll second it.
All right, with that, Charmaine, can you do a vote?
Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes.
Commissioner Fitch,
Yes.
Commissioner Holtrop,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Workman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dent,
Yes.
Commissioner Spruce,
Yes.
Commissioner Shane,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Chair Hilpert.
I'll vote yes.
Motion passes. The vote is 10-0-0.
Okay. Next item up, it's proposed language for a standalone ordinance. Again, when we had our meetings with the city council members and the mayor's office, we expressed the urgent need to be able to try to have commissioners so we can actually do the work of oversight. As I mentioned, when we had the city council meeting, the day before we had that, we had another commissioner announce their intention to resign. They did extend that back until the end of next month, but that puts us in a problem where we're only going to be able to have 12 commissioners, and of those, about 9 or 10 would actually be doing active case review. So for as many cases we have, having approximately 9 or so commissioners to do over 110 cases, the workload is not sustainable. And what we've shared with all the city council members is taking too long. And we as volunteers, we physically cannot do all that work. So I'm not sure how much political will there is to do it, but what we were proposing is that we would try to make it as simple for them as possible and propose some language so we could actually try to start that process. The reality is City Council President Pro Tem Monica Montgomery Stepp's office is not really in support of it. They would rather do everything all in one motion, and it would have to go to public safety and little neighborhoods before it goes to City Council. So if she chooses not to docket it, it might die there. But that being said, I personally feel that we should do everything we can to raise the issue and let them know that we need to have new commissioners added. Otherwise, community oversight is going to stop. So if you want to scroll down, I think it's on page 19. What I did was I drafted some initial criteria. I tried to copy as much of the draft implementation ordinance as possible, so it wouldn't be throwing anything new at the city council. So what we have here is this is all pretty much taken directly from the working draft. So the selection criteria pretty much stays exactly the same. I don't know if you can make that a tiny bit bigger so people might be able to read that a little bit better. Thank you. So a lot of these criteria here, I'll follow the same requirements that were in the draft. So basically citizenship isn't considered. You have to be a city of San Diego resident at the time of being your appointment. We were proposing it during the interim period that the seats that are defined. So for example, the seats based on city council district, the 5 seats that are required for low or moderate income, et cetera. And then kind of the other categories, trying to find someone that's, for example, in homeless outreach related services or criminal justice things, that those aren't required, but that we would do what we could to try to find candidates to fill those missing categories that we don't currently have. So for example, we're missing some city council districts. We would try to do what we can to get representation from those. If we could find some people that had, civil rights related backgrounds, we would definitely try to do that. And then because Right now, we only have 23 seats. The implementation ordinance would have 25. We're proposing leaving out the additional 2 seats that are designated for youth until the ordinance is passed. Same thing, we're going to maintain the ordinance prohibition on law enforcement officers or their families from being able to be eligible. And then we're trying to make sure it's very clear that background checks are performed by the city's personnel department and not San Diego Police Department. If you want to scroll down a tiny bit for the term, we're basically proposing kind of the same thing, that it would essentially stay as is. Doug had a great suggestion to try to make it a little bit more clear, to basically say that the term for interim commissioners is until permanent commissioners are appointed, which would be dictated by the forthcoming implementation ordinance. And then lastly, this is a recommendation that we had made in December to the City Council, that the commission would create a nominations committee, and then we would forward those suggested commissioners to the City Council for their consideration. This is open for discussion of everyone on the commission and our members of the public that are here. But the nomination committee would be composed of 9 people, 3 of which would be current or former commission members. 6 would be community members that would be chosen by the commission. 2 would be academic professionals who hopefully specialize in policing, criminal justice, and/or civil rights. 4 would be from community nonprofits in various fields that we're looking for racial identity profiling, homelessness, substance abuse, et cetera. And none of the nominations committee can be associated with law enforcement. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, comments, thoughts from the commission. And the first hand I see up is Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. As you know, I support this. My question is, as I was reading through the agenda for tonight, it occurred to me, I don't know if we've discussed this, and I don't know if it would be a good idea, but I suspect it might be more palatable to City Council. Is there any chance that there are former members who would be willing to come back for an abbreviated interim term? And I ask that because former members are people who already went through the vetting process, and most importantly, they already went through the training process. And so if we have anybody local who was formerly on the CRB, it might be a patchwork approach. I would still suggest that we have a committee that includes community members in the way that you've laid out for this nominations committee. But it might be more expedient in terms of actually solving the problem we're trying to solve. And it might be more palatable to City Council since Council has already approved former members. Thanks.
Yeah, so that's a great point. And actually we that came up in some of our meetings with City Council members. To be honest, it's kind of a double-edged sword. We have heard and gotten some pushback from community members saying we don't want to go backwards. I personally agree with you. I think if it's a temporary thing, I think having people who are already trained and essentially, as you said, have already been approved by the City Council, getting them up and running would be a lot faster. And I think that would definitely help us. Because the training process, it takes a good amount of time. I think all of us here know, it usually takes a good 6 months before you get good at reviewing cases and you understand policy and procedure. So I think maybe the happy medium there is if we had former CRB members that were interested and they were to apply, I think we could kind of put them through the same process. The community can still, ask some questions and go through that. I'm not opposed to it, but I know we've had a couple public comments where people said they didn't want that. I think it's, like I said, it's a double-edged sword, but I agree with that feedback. I don't think that former members generally should be, reappointed unless they go through the same vetting process. I'm just thinking in terms of practicality, especially if there's resistance from City Council about this, then I'm trying to make this more than an exercise, in other words. If it's unlikely that this is actually going to happen, then I don't think we should be spending a lot of time on something that's unlikely to happen, given everything.
But if there are little tweaks we can make that would actually make it happen quickly so that we could actually try to solve the backlog problem or at least manage it more. Yeah, so, okay, that's all.
Well, I think what maybe we could do is if this does move forward, we could send out an email to all of the former CRB members and see if there's interest. And then we can put them in the same process if they express interest. I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea. And they would go, to your point, it goes through the same process. They'd still have, the interview and they'd still talk to the community members that are kind of positioning them. Yeah, I think we can, if this moves forward, we can definitely do that. Robin, I think I saw your hand up earlier, but now it's down. Did you still have a question or comment?
I do not.
Okay. Any other questions on that? All right, so the motion is to approve a standalone ordinance to allow the city council to fill vacancies for interim commissioners. Since I wrote this, I guess I will make the motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second, Brandon. Copy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no control.
All right, thank you. Charmaine, can you call vote, please?
Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes.
Commissioner Fitch,
Yes.
Commissioner Holtrop,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Workman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dent,
Yes.
Commissioner Spruce,
Yes.
Commissioner Shane,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Chair Hilpert.
Yes.
Motion passes. The vote is 11-0-0.
Perfect, thanks. And our last item here is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. Patrick had come up with a proposal to reduce the backlog of cases. And I know it's not in the agenda that we sent out, but Charmaine did send that to all the commissioners, and I could pull it up and share my screen, Patrick, if you want to go over that.
Okay.
Let me pull it up real quick. Give me 1 second.
I'll just basically say to everybody, so this came out of a discussion a couple of weeks ago. I have not, as Robin and Nancy know all too well, I have not been able to do case review for the last couple of months because of work demands and then a brief illness. I'm going to be able to restart soon, but that break gave me an opportunity, I guess, to think about what might actually help us. Every time I get an email with a list of cases, I feel overwhelmed and suffocated. I'm sure I'm not the only one. And I also feel worried that we're not providing very good oversight right now, that there's a lot that's just getting missed because we, as volunteers, don't have time to look at it. So Doug and Brandon asked me to just draft this. I did this relatively quickly, but the idea is that teams could devote some of their time. Well, let me just walk through it. So the idea is that a case gets assigned to a team. Typically that case gets assigned to one lead reviewer on that team. The idea here is that that lead reviewer would review the case normally. If it seems like there are no omissions from the file, if there are no sustained findings or other findings, which by definition are sustained, if the team agrees with all of those findings, and if there's no problem with the findings or with the allegations themselves. In other words, there's nothing that's been missed, a body-worn camera that wasn't turned on, that didn't get called out, and so on. So if if everything in the IA investigation seems correct, then at least one other member of that team would also need to have reviewed that case. But the team would then draft, I called it a concur brief. I don't know why I called it that, but the idea is that you basically write a short, a very short report saying everything was above board, there was nothing missing, and so on. Sort of like, Nancy, I know you sent me an email with this, but whatever the redacted summaries, whatever they're called, Nancy, don't get angry at me. I don't remember what the actual nomenclature is. But sort of like that short, I mean, a really brief thing. I also suggest that we go ahead and redact them. In other words, don't use any identifying information in this brief. So that would then facilitate getting it out faster, transposing it into that other form that we can release. And then I just sort of started thinking about what this would look like at one of our closed meetings. So the idea would be that all cases that have one of these would be put on a consent agenda, and the Google Drive that we all have access to before the meeting, those case folders would include the brief as well as the full IA report. And so, you know, commissioners could look at the full IA report if they have time to do that. But we would treat this as a consent agenda, and consent agendas typically, you know, any voting member can say, I don't think that, you know, this one thing should be on the consent agenda. We need to pull it off so we can discuss it. But if there's no one who's pulling one of these cases off the consent agenda, then we don't, you know, consent agendas you just vote on and they're done. So I haven't spent very much time developing this or thinking about it. This really came out of a few conversations, and then I sat down to draft this actual proposal. So I guess I'll stop there.
Thanks, Patrick. You know, I know this is something we've had some conversations on. How can we simplify and be more efficient at what we're doing? And so, you know, Patrick's been really busy, but, you know, we asked him if he could draft this up last Friday, and he sent that out for everyone to look at. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions or comments. The first hand up I see is Doug.
Okay. I have excuse me, 2 comments or questions, and hopefully my internet won't go out in the middle of talking. It's gone out 3 times already in this meeting. First, I think that we talked about at the Transition Planning Committee meeting that this would not occur to officer involved shootings and in custody deaths, so we ought to specify that. But it also was my feeling or my understanding that this was intended to be a way to expedite review of cases and to kind of triage and identify the cases that were most important or most important for the commission to do a full review of. And so maybe I misunderstood, but I was kind of envisioning the process to be more in line with the way we do an audit. So it would not be as time consuming. I mean, this saves time in terms of the report writing, but in my report writing is maybe 30% of the time of a case. And so my suggestion would be that the team read all of the internal affairs report and then watch BWC video or listen to actual audio videos as they deem appropriate, kind of like we do with it in an audit, so that we could also save time in doing the case review. And if in doing that, I mean, so in other words, we would do a review of a case similar to an audit. If we found everything to be in order, we would go ahead and do the concur brief. If we felt that it required a more thorough review by the team, then we would go ahead and watch all the body worn camera, listen to all of the audios, and write up our report using our new abbreviated format. And so, so I guess the two suggestions I would make to Patrick's proposal is that it would not apply to officer-involved shootings and in custody deaths, and that that the review would be similar to an audit. So instead of saying two members of a team would read the IA investigation report, and I'm not sure how we would word that, but and all other evidence as necessary. Maybe adding the words as necessary, so it would not require that we watch all the body worn camera.
Doug, I think your first proposal is already here. The right there, yeah.
I just added that while Doug was talking.
Oh, I thought I had already put that in there.
I think, Patrick, we talked about it, but I don't think it was in there. But
I forgot. Okay, yeah, thank you, Doug. Thank you.
I just typed that in, and then Doug, where were you thinking of trying to add?
And then put all maybe all other. I'm sorry. So the procedure number one, but conduct a standard review of the IA investigation report and all evidence, maybe as needed. Which is kind of the way, at least the way that I do a audit. It's not intended that you're doing an audit that you watch all the body worn camera and listen to all the interviews, but you can, but you're not required to. So I guess that's the biggest thing here is we're trying to save time by making it less time writing up the case, which the Concur Brief does, and I think in an effective way, but also to expedite review of the cases. So the cases that are kind of straightforward, we don't have to spend as much time on those cases, so we can spend more time on the more complicated cases or the cases where it's not as black and white as a way of kind of triage cases. So those would be my suggestions.
Okay. Thanks, Marty. You're up.
Okay, let's see if I could do this gently. Saturday morning when I looked at the YouTube of the Friday meeting and I heard Patrick's proposal, I about fell out of my chair. I mean, if anything, the community for so many years has been saying that all we are is a rubber stamp of IA. And if this isn't that, I don't know what is. Now, it's rare when we present a case where there are no questions coming from everybody else. But if we're requiring the commissioners to read the entire case for all the cases going to be presented on that Tuesday in order to find out what's really happening, there's no time for that. I personally, I'm very opposed to this. I think we just need to buckle down and do the cases. And to be honest, there are some cases that this thing would fall in and would be used, this kind of like audit, and they don't take much time at all to read, as far as I'm concerned, to read and write up. And you could do it in 4 or 5 hours, I think, in most cases. So I'm opposed to this. That's my own opinion.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Nancy.
Did I get there? Oh, yep. Good. I want to second what Marty said. I am also opposed to this process. I really do not like the idea of just reading IA's report and then deciding that there's no problem, because they write really beautiful reports. Captain note, they really do write good reports, and they all hold together, and they all pretty much say there's nothing wrong. And I don't usually find problems from what's written in the I report. I find problems when I compare it to what's on body worn camera and in interviews. And I just don't think we can shorten this and make it an audit process and do a good job.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, but I don't think anyone is suggesting that we only read the IA report. The idea is that, yeah, of course, we still read the IA report and we still review body camera video and you still look at other documents. But if there's essentially in that first process, everything seems clear, you don't have requests for additional findings, things like that, you know, that's where we're trying to streamline things. And I would say this is kind of in concert with the last item we talked about. If we're unable to get new commissioners added from the city council, which I think is really important, but let's assume that doesn't happen. We have to do something to be able to get cases coming through, because, you know, when I've done some media interviews, I've even kind of said, you know, honestly, I get it. I understand the frustration when someone files a complaint and it takes 1.5 years for them to find out what the result was. That's not satisfying. And, you know, in the past, you know, we were really, really good about getting our cases done within 90 days. The problem is now we just physically can't do it. We don't have enough commissioners. We don't have the ability to do the work. So for cases that aren't complicated, that's why we're proposing something that at least would help get those resolved quicker. And as Patrick said, if anyone on the commission, when they review that summary, if they're like, hey, I have questions, or I don't think this should be done in this format, we would then kick it back to the team and they would go back to the old process. So it's not perfect. I absolutely agree with that. I think given the solution of if we don't get new commissioners, we're going to have cases that are going well beyond that year mark, and then that doesn't help anybody. So that's why I think this is better than the alternative. Is this perfect? Absolutely not. But the idea is this would only be temporary until the city council does their implementation ordinance and they eventually appoint their 25 members. Because I do feel like we have to do something. Otherwise, you know, the commission is not going to be able to be effective. And, you know, unfortunately, Measure B was very well intentioned, but the way it's being implemented is causing so many problems. You know, I think the UT even put it. It's great that we had this measure that's supposed to increase oversight, but perversely, it's limiting oversight because we don't have the time and the ability to do our cases.
Brandon,
Next.
if I did 100 cases, I would be loath to say I could even find one where this process would make sense. I just don't think you go through and don't have questions. You always have questions.
True.
Thank you.
You know, and I think there's also, I would agree with you. There have been cases where I've had questions, and then once I've had the discussion, or that we've had that, I don't say debate, but we've had the discussion with internal affairs, and they've answered those questions. And sometimes I'm like, well, that raises other questions, and other times I'm like, okay, that makes sense. You know, I get that was following policy or procedure or whatever. So it depends on the case, but your point's definitely valid. But I mean, I think we have to try to do something to make sure we can try to go through cases. And if this is the best solution, you know, I'm not sure, but that's why I wanted to bring it for everyone to review and discuss.
Okay.
I see 3 hands up, and I'll try to go in order. It was Maxine, Doug, and Patrick. So Maxine, you're up first.
I agree also with Marty, and I know we have a tremendous amount of cases, and I think it is not our fault that we're not getting the work done. I think we should continue to work as expeditiously as we can, as we've done in the past. And I think at least once a week or once a month, we should let City Council, Monica, give her a whole list. We have 8 people. These are the cases we have until you all give us more commissioners. We are working as hard as we can, and there's not more that we can do. So how do you eat an elephant? One slice at a time. We continue to do those cases as best that we can, work as hard as we can, and there's nothing more than we can do. Thank you.
And I think, I know the media watches these meetings and they see our case numbers going up. So maybe they start reporting on it too. I mean, who knows? Doug, you're up next.
Yeah, well, and our case numbers will keep going up. I'm not sure if they are right now. Last I heard, they're around 110. I can say for a team 4, we have 28 cases. 18 of those are category 1s. And of those 18, 7 of them are already past the 1-year mark. And so even if we were to find something that should be sustained or changed, we would not be able to change the outcome. I think what's being proposed is not that we do a rubber stamp, it's that we try to prioritize and spend our time on those cases that are more serious and more complex. I don't think that anybody would agree that anybody here would agree that our audits are rubber stamping. We go through those fairly thoroughly, and we watch body-worn camera and other stuff as necessary. It's just trying to find a way to expedite the review. And I certainly believe that what Patrick has come up with in terms of the Concur Brief will save time as well.
Okay, thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, I want to be very clear here that the proposal that I've written up, I realize that Doug has offered amendments. The proposal I wrote up doesn't in any way shorten case review. I focused on shortening writing the case report for cases where there aren't issues. So what I wrote up here is to continue doing the case review, but shortening the writing of case reports when cases are not, when there aren't disagreements on the part of the team and nothing's been missed, and also to write them up in the form that would allow them to be public quickly, right? Because we also have a backlog in cases that we're able to release to the public, which was a big part of what the public wanted. So I want to be clear. I hear folks talking about cheapening or watering down case review. What I've written up here doesn't change the case review process. I was focused on the writing of case reports, which do take a long time. I mean, that's a few hours of work, and then running it by your team and then editing it together. And so on. So it's not saving a ton of time, but it's saving a few hours per case. So just, I didn't want to leave this discussion with anyone thinking that I was suggesting we water down case review and just rubber stamp IA. That is in no way my position on this commission or with this proposal.
Okay, thanks, Sheila.
Hi, thanks. I don't know if this is possible. I was wondering, is there any way with IA's help that perhaps they can stop sending cases just for a period of time? Sometimes we get cases that they toll because they're having to wait on criminal sentencing and things like that. So a team may not get the case for 30 or 60 days. So that kind of puts it behind for the team that may be waiting, So is that an option? I just thought I'd throw that out there. Thanks.
Yeah, there was some discussion of essentially stopping to receive cases. I personally don't think that's a great idea because then in my mind, that means there is zero oversight of those cases. And I don't think that's what we or the community want. But I mean, what we've tried to impress upon the city council is literally we're drowning in cases. I don't think there's any other way we can put it. There's too many cases for too few commissioners to be able to review and to be able to give the community what they deserve when someone files a complaint. So I think what we're trying to do is come up with some kind of a solution. And maybe what we do is, maybe for this one, we, instead of having this kind of become like a permanent thing, maybe we just do it as a test case. And Patrick might be willing to do it. I'm certainly willing to do a couple cases from Team 6, and we can bring it for the commission to review, and we can decide, do we like it, or do we think this isn't effective and this isn't doing what we need for cases? I personally would support that, but I'd open it up to anyone to chime in. But even if I think even if we do the motion to approve this proposal, on a test case basis for 3 to 5 cases. I think that'd be a good idea. And then we can see, does this solve what we need? And we can figure out how to best move forward. Poppy, I see your hand up. And Doug, I think you and Maxine still have your hand up, but I think those are already questions you've asked. So I'm going to go to Poppy first. And if you guys have questions, we'll come back to you guys.
Yeah, I'm actually, my comment related to a comment that Charmaine included in the chat, which was that the new commission will inherit a backlog of cases. And I think that something that's really important, maybe for all of us to remember, and of course for the public to be aware of, is that the new commission is also going to get paid positions whose role is to do much of the work that this commission is doing now. And the actual work of a commissioner, once the new commission is in place, is going to be seismically different. The volume of work that is expected on a case-by-case basis will be significantly reduced. And so I think that that's an important component for us to be thinking about while we're having this discussion. And I want to say, Patrick, thank you for bringing an idea. And Brandon, thank you for facilitating this conversation of what is otherwise really difficult, which is, it will not be possible to continue doing the same thing and have a different outcome. And so I can see the philosophical differences in the dialogue, that some folks are just like one foot in front of the other, just keep doing the thing, we'll get there eventually. And then others of us, myself included, I just feel, I feel demoralized and disinclined to put one foot in front of the other when I think there's a mountain ahead of us and there's no clear plan for how to climb that mountain, and we don't have resources or supplies to do it. Sorry for the mountain analogy, but there it is. Thanks, Brandon.
And I think kind of adding to your comment, I think part of the concern is we don't see any light at the end of the tunnel coming from City Council. And I think that's part of the problem is, I think if it was like City Council's working to get us new commissioners, and yeah, you guys are gonna have to work a little bit extra hard for the next, 4 to 6 months, but there's help coming and we don't even see that help's coming. And I think that's part of the problem is it's hard to ask volunteers who in many cases are putting in, we've always told people you can expect to volunteer about 20 hours a month, which is a lot. But we have many commissioners that are probably doing, 40, 60. I know Doug and I are putting in, last month, I think I put in 100 and I'm sure Doug put in close to that, if not more. So for volunteers, it's not realistic to ask volunteers to be putting in that much time and not expect them to eventually burn out and resign. So, and I think that's part of the problem we're having now. But that being said, I think we may have beat this one a little too much, but-
Oh, wait, Brandon.
Yeah, go ahead.
What would happen if we suspended our audits of CAT 2?
I'd have to go back and look to see how many category 2s we currently have.
I can get that information.
I don't have that up in front of me, but
I can give you the information.
I mean, I guess I think Doug kind of brought it up. Maybe what we do if there's a case where we don't have disagreements with the IA report and we've reviewed, body cameras and the evidence that we need to, instead of doing the full, quote review, maybe we move that to an audit instead, which is a little bit shorter. Instead of it being sometimes, 8 to 15 to 20 pages, those are usually like 3 or 4. So that might make it a little bit easier. I mean, if there's some people that are uncomfortable with kind of we agree. And Charmaine just typed in that there's 27 category 2s currently.
So that would reduce our total number and make it look a little bit easier. I just think if you have a case where you agree with everything, you write a very short report. I don't understand why we have to have a separate format for it. I just think you write a very short report. Each allegation, you say what happened, and so we still have a report with our format, but it's just short. And I would suggest to get, if we would just set aside the Cat 2s until we have staff to handle them. That's mine. Thank you.
Yep. I mean, I get that. I think part of the problem is I think if we just suddenly wipe off a whole bunch of cases, I think that's doing a disservice and it makes it look different. The issue is still the same. It's just we've recategorized stuff. So it's the numbers are just getting shifted. So it's not really solving the problem. It's just kind of kicking it down the road. But anyway, and I see a couple more hands that came up. I think it's Poppy, I think you just asked your question. So I think your hand's still up. And then Nancy, you had yours. Doug, you're up next. And then followed by Robin.
Okay. Well, excuse me. I would not be opposed to Nancy's suggestion.
Good.
In fact, that's what Team 4 has already done. We have not done a Cat 2 in over a year. And so we have 10 Cat 2 cases we have not looked at, but we also have 18 Category 1s, 7 of which are already beyond the 1 year. And so we are drowning, and we were trying to find a way to keep above water. If we don't do something, we'll continue to drown. So, but I would support, maybe that'd be a separate motion, is to suspend audits on Category 2, and that would help out a little. So anyway.
Okay, Robin.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I'm open to either option. I also, a couple of weeks ago, had the same thought about suspending Category 2 audits for now, while we're all trying to get through the important work of Category 1s. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, Maxine.
There. I agree with Nancy, but I also have a question. When you tell City Council how much backlog we have, what is their response?
I think they understand there's a lot of cases, and I think there's concern, but there hasn't been a lot of political will to date to move a standalone ordinance forward.
So what is their response? Do they say, okay, you guys keep doing it? What do they actually say when you say we have all these cases that are backlog? We have half of the people that we had a year ago. And so therefore, we don't have the staff that we had before. What do they actually say when you make that statement to them?
Yeah, so, obviously it depends on the city council member. We've definitely had some that are like trying to find out how are we looking at cases. We've explained how we're trying to triage them. So we're basically, for anyone who's watching that's not aware, we're looking at any case that has sustained findings. So we're making sure those are getting done within that 1 year mark. And we're trying to go through to look at what the highest priority cases are and the ones that are getting oldest first. That being said, that's what we've been doing for the last 6-9 months, more than that, and we're still struggling. So I think we've had some city council members that are trying to come up with suggestions. We did have one city council member that actually had made the suggestion that Becca brought up earlier today of could we potentially go back and have former CRB members come back and join to be able to try to help us do those cases. But I think the reality is it's going to have to go to the city council, and they're going to have to stand up and vote for it if they believe it's important to have commissioners on here. My personal opinion, and then I've made this clear to all of them, is I don't think we can wait the year it's going to take for us to get new commissioners. And the other thing we've shared with them is once you appoint them, we still need to train them and we still need to get them up and running, which can take up to another year. So theoretically, we could be waiting another 18 months before we have new commissioners that are up and running and ready to review cases and be presenting them to the commission to have them vote on it. So, and I think as Poppy, I think kind of raised, and I shared, is I think the concern is we have a lot of people who are volunteering massive amount of hours and quite honestly, they're burning out, and I'm one of them. So, we can't keep doing this for another year and expect the city council to not expect more people to resign. So you know.
So does the city council expect us, 9 or 10 people, to do the work of the 20 odd people that we had? Is that their expectation, that we get that done with the amount of personnel that we have? Is that their expectation of us?
Probably.
I don't think that's their expectation. I think they know that's not fair, but I don't see a lot of movement to help fix the problem. That's part of my concern. So we've raised it with everyone. Obviously, we send a lot of memos. We had all those meetings with city council members in the mayor's office. You know, we can't force them to act. But, you know, as I've said, is if they don't, my personal opinion is if they don't do something now, they're going to be forced to do something in 6 months when people resign. And that's right. That's going to look bad for everybody. It's kind of my point on that one. But
I don't think it will look bad for us, because we have continued to do, when we come onto this commission, we didn't come on to be here a lifetime. We came to donate our time and to do something for the community, 2, 3, maybe 5, 6, 8 years. But whenever we were ready to leave, we had that opportunity to do so. And so I think we need to make it very clear to the city that I'm not going to take the blame that we have these many cases, because it is not on us to feel that obligated for 100 cases when we only have half the people. And so I think the hard work that we're doing now, we continue. You don't burn yourself out. You do what you can do. And when the city council sees that they're dragging their feet and not us, they will have to make a move.
Yeah, no,
thank you.
I would agree. And that's why I've told them if you fail to do something now, you're going to be forced to do it within 6 months. And that's my guess. But I mean, we're all, I think, on the same page, and I think we're all equally frustrated. So I agree with you.
I'm not frustrated. I can do what I can do now. I put in many more hours than I did my full 20 hours in the beginning, but I'm not frustrated because I understand what my commitment is to the cases that I work on. My commitment is there. I do the best that I can, and I know it's well done. And so I don't get committed because somebody else is not moving. I don't take on their responsibility. My responsibility is to do what I can with the case, each individual case that's before me. And I can't worry about the other 60 cases that I have. One case at a time is what I work on and give it the very best that I can do. And it's up to the city council. If they don't move, then that onus is on them. It's not on us. So I would not feel ashamed. I would feel not embarrassed if 6 months from now, we're down to 2 or 3 commissioners, because you can only do what you can do.
Well said.
Thank you.
I fully agree with you. Patrick and then Doug.
Yeah, I just want to say, so I think we should set this proposal aside. There isn't sort of a consensus that this is a good way to go. And with that in mind, I think we just set it aside. This isn't going to work for us. I want to thank Ms. Clark for putting things so clearly the way she just did and naming the problem. I really appreciate the clarity of everything Ms. Clark just said. I really appreciate the clarity of what Poppy said a few minutes ago about how the commission or the city council needs to be paying attention to this crisis and planning forward so that the new commission doesn't just replicate working conditions that are unsustainable, especially given the kinds of diversities that they want and that the community want on this commission. You know, and I want to speak plainly about the situation we are in. I want to make sure this is an open meeting, and I want the public to understand the case review that we are doing is providing very good oversight to the cases that we're able to pay attention to. The vast majority of cases on the docket right now are receiving no oversight. And slowly, there's an increasing number of those cases, as Doug mentioned, that are past the statutory deadline and so will never receive the kind of oversight because of that statutory deadline that the community expects. So you know, this has been a much more contentious discussion than I expected, frankly. And I'm happy to, again, just set this aside because it doesn't seem to be what folks here tonight think will work. I'm happy to set it aside. I want, you know, I want to make sure people out there understand that there are cases that are receiving no oversight currently, and an increasing number of those cases will receive no oversight in terms of being within that statutory deadline. That's the situation we're in right now. As Ms. Clark said, it is not the fault of anyone on this commission. And that's where we are.
Thanks, Patrick. Doug.
Okay. Well, actually, I agree with Patrick. I was going to suggest we put this aside because there doesn't seem to be a consensus on this proposal. But I think we might have consensus on on another proposal, and that would be to suspend the Category 2 cases and to request that teams prioritize all their cases. So instead of determining cases sequentially, that they look at all the cases and look at which ones they think are most critical. Included in that would be any cases where IA has found to sustain findings or we're coming up against a deadline. And before I make that motion, I agree with Poppy, but the staffing that we have proposed for the new commission doesn't really include staffing to do case review. We have staffing to do independent investigations, and we have staffing to do auditing and policy analysis. And so perhaps the Transition Review Committee should look at our staffing to see whether or not we can use staff to assist in the review of cases that are done by IA. But that's a separate issue. But I'll go ahead and make a motion that the commission temporarily suspend Category 2 audits and that teams be encouraged to review their backlog and prioritize cases, giving special priority to cases where IA has determined there are sustained findings with an upcoming imminent deadline.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Doug, a second by Nancy. Charmaine, can you do a vote, please?
Okay.
There probably should be discussion, though we may have discussed it to death.
I was gonna say, I think we kind of did discuss it, but I guess if anyone wants to chime in at the last minute before we do a vote, I kind of assumed all those had already been done, but I don't see any hands up. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the vote.
Commissioner Case.
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn.
Yes.
Commissioner Fitch.
Yes.
Commissioner Holtrop.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Workman.
Yes.
Commissioner Dent.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Spruce.
Yes.
Commissioner Shea.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Chair Hilpert.
Yes.
Motion passes. The vote is 11-0-0.
All right. Thanks, Patrick, for pulling that document up. I think it was helpful, but but agreed. I think it's just we're not at consensus, so we'll move on. Next, moving on to the committee chair reports. Nancy, do you have anything for continuing education?
No.
Okay, that was fast. Patrick, do you have anything for outreach?
No, there will be an announcement about community involvement in a particular hire that's coming up. I think Doug might talk about it a bit more in his report, but once we have greater clarity on that schedule, I will be pushing out to community members how they can participate.
Okay, thank you. Doug, I will open it up for rules, but I don't think there's anything because obviously we're in transition, so we've kind of been doing nothing on rules. Is that still correct?
That's true, and nothing on the handbook either, so you can skip that.
Got it. For policy committee, there are a couple items. I did send out an email to all the policy members. I think it was yesterday, trying to coordinate a time. We're trying to do some meeting next week. So I'm just trying to play with some schedules. I know Robin is going to be out, but she offered to do a video thing for something she wanted to present, and we can just play that at the meeting. So I'll work around that one. And I think Doug had given me an email of a couple of days that worked for him. So I'm going to be trying to schedule that for sometime next week. It'll probably be, I'm going to guess maybe Wednesday or Thursday. So I have some time to do the agenda. I'm also going to try to put the protest policy on there again, bring that back kind of full circle. We had made 19 recommendations to the department. They had replied to all of them. Some of them they implemented, some of them they categorized as cannot be done, and others they categorized as things that need more research on. So there's some that we want to push back on, and then also we want to find out what the research was on the ones that they had basically kind of postponed for a bit. And then there's a couple other items, but they're all in the agenda. I don't think we have to totally go over that, but we'll be discussing on the policy committee meeting. Like I said, it'll probably be sometime next week. I'm thinking maybe Thursday. Kevin's not here to talk about recruitment. Obviously, there's not much to do for recruitment since we don't have a criteria yet of what the new commissioners would need to be under. But once we have some guidance from City Council on that, we can move forward there. I did attend the Citizens Advisory Board meeting. The last one I went to, there was the new board members got seated. There's a new POA representative that introduced himself. He kind of started off saying, you're not all going to like me. There's things that I'm going to be supporting that haven't been supported in the past, that he was going to be supporting officers more than had been done. So that was kind of interesting. But from what I understand, he's actually had some pretty open communications with people, and I'm assuming also with CAB. But I don't think there was really that much to report on there. There was still the idea, and now that there's a new chair as well. So I reached out to her and I haven't heard back. But with the previous chair, we were going to possibly try to hold a joint meeting between CAB and the commission. So we'll try see if we can do that again. With that, I will pass it over to Doug for the transition planning committee.
Okay. There's a lot going on with the transition planning committee. The budget, we are beginning the process for the budgeting process for the fiscal year that begins on July the 1st. We've made a couple of requests, including making sure we have adequate funding for our contract counsel, having contingency funding for investigators. In case we don't have enough investigators, we can, we'll be able to contract there with some. And we're changing some of the job descriptions and classifications around so that we would have a full-time person doing our accounting and budget work and a full-time person doing our complaints tracking and coordination. With regard to staffing and legal counsel, starts first with staffing. We got approval from the city to use their executive search firm, which is called CPS HR Consulting. They're located in Chicago, but they specialize in doing searches for government agencies. And they are going to help us with the search for our deputy executive director, who will be the number 2 in charge and also the person who would be primarily responsible for community engagement. We're meeting with the recruiter at our transition committee planning meeting this coming Friday to talk about the position. And so anybody is welcome to join us at 10:30 on Friday. And as Patrick mentioned, we also are going to be planning to have a community roundtable or forum so that we will be able to get their input on the position as well. Our outside legal counsel, we have selected the person, but they can't start until the city council approves their contract. Right now, that's scheduled to be on the city council's agenda for, I believe, April the 5th as a consent item. And so assuming that everything goes smoothly there, we'll be able to have that person on board, and we plan to invite them to our April 8th transition committee meeting to begin discussing preparing our standard operating procedures for investigations. And then office-based update, Charmaine and I met with Karen Johnson from real estate assets. They have a new name. Their acronym is DREAM, but I forget what it stands for. This past week, there are some additional buildings downtown where the city has some personnel in that are opening up, and the space in Civic Center Plaza may be a little bit more expensive than we were anticipating. You know, the estimate that we have for doing the plans, just the plans for the renovation is $21,000. And so she's going to take a look at that and see which one is the most cost effective. Right now, we're still moving ahead with looking at the 9th floor of Civic Center Plaza, but we may look at some other alternatives to see whether or not they would work for us. It might be a little bit cheaper in the long run. And that basically is it for right now.
All right, thank you. And just adding to what Doug was saying about the recruitment, outside recruitment agency, we are using the city's HR pre-contracted thing, but it is coming out of our budget. So we still have to pay the $25,000 per position for that.
And if I could add one more thing I just thought of in terms of the staffing, the first priority is going to be the Deputy Executive Director, which we're beginning immediately. And then our second priority will be the Supervising Investigator, who will help us get geared up for the investigations. And then the next priority, which would be a concurrent priority, would be the Policy Analyst and the Performance Auditor. And so we're hoping to have at least 2 of those positions on board before the beginning of the fiscal year.
All right, thanks. For the chair's reports, I know you guys get tired of me always saying this. Please try to make sure you get your volunteer hours in. As we were just telling everyone at City Council how many hours we're all working, I want to make sure that we all get the credit for the hours that we are putting in as a commission. I know I'm usually really bad about putting in my true hours. I tend to estimate and I probably underestimate, but please definitely make sure you put your volunteer hours in. It's also helpful for when we do our report so we can kind of report back what we're doing. And Robin, I see you have your hand up and I'm guessing it was probably for Doug, not me.
No, it was for you. Is the drop-down problem fixed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, Alina got that fixed maybe about a month ago, I believe.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Moving on, the other item is Commissioner Committee assignments. I know we sent out the spreadsheet of what the commission assignments are. If anyone wants to change or add or hop from one committee to another, let us know and we can get you moved over. I believe we put that on the Google Drive under our shared documents folder. So if you want to see kind of and confirm where you are, we can make changes. If you want to be on more than one, that's great. I know Nancy in the past, she was on, I think, almost all of them. That's obviously not required, but you do need to, every commissioner needs to be on at least one. One of the things that we've been trying to do for ever since COVID, is we wanted to be able to recognize our former CRB and commission members that had resigned or left the commission for one reason or another. Our goal was we wanted to be able to do it in person. And given COVID, that obviously hasn't happened. Since we're not sure when we're going to be able to have in-person meetings again, Charmaine and I had a conversation and we're going to try to move forward with probably doing a virtual version of that so we can invite our former commissioners and CRB members to our meeting. We can kind of virtually award them their certificate and then we can mail them their certificates. But I want to make sure that we recognize all the hard work that our commissioners had done in the past. And I know for some of them, they've been gone for almost 2 years. So I think it's about time we at least do something to kind of recognize the work for them. So that'll probably be next month is my guess. Maxine. You're on mute if you still had a question or comment. Okay, I'm gonna move forward. You can come back later. Kind of briefly spoke about it. We had met with all the city council members and the mayor's office, kind of explained to them what our priorities were, some of the issues that we're dealing with the commission. Basically the 5 items we talked to all of them about before it went to the city council. We talked about the implementation ordinance. The biggest issue there was we wanted to make sure that they all understood why it's important that we have full unredacted access to pretty much not just the police department, but any city files that relate to our oversight or that are under our oversight purview. And I think pretty much all of them understand that. One of the things that, we've kind of shared is, we did have a case where there were 29 BOCs. We only got 3. That's not great. So in general, we typically work with the department and internal affairs and can get that negotiated, but we want to make sure the implementation ordinance is extremely clear that there's no ambiguity on what we have access to. The other thing we talked about was an interim standard operating procedure for the officer involved shootings. What we had done previously was after the chaptering date of Measure B, which was December 18th, I believe, we basically needed to start doing investigations of officer involved shootings and in custody deaths. Well, we can't do that until the implementation ordinance happens. So initially we said we would not review those cases until we could actually do the investigation. Since a lot of those are not going to be able to be investigated by us, we have basically said we want to go back to the old process of at least being part of that and doing a review and then presenting that. So we're going to be asking the city council to agree with our changes to the standard operating procedures. Pretty much all of them have agreed to that. They don't think there's anything questionable with that one. As we talked a little bit earlier, was the executive director selection. We talked about that, making sure that we're part of the process with city council. We talked about the standalone ordinance to try to appoint new commissioners. And then lastly, we also told all of them about the need to have our outside counsel appointed by the city council. So I think all of them are pretty excited the fact that we actually have our own outside counsel now. We just want them working for us. So we can't do that until the city council takes action. But as Charmaine and Doug have shared, they're going to be having that docketed for next month. So does anyone have any questions on the city council meetings or anything with the mayor? The other thing is kind of talking about the last several months, we have been participating with the regional and statewide oversight agency groups. I have to say those conversations have been great. There's a lot of really good ideas that I've heard coming from other cities and other departments. One of them actually came from BART, which is the Bay Area's kind of subway system. One of the things that they actually said is that they had a conversation with the BART police POA, and they've modified how body cameras are working. And so now they're basically, it's still the buffer period, but during that buffer period, it not only catches the audio or the video, it also catches the audio. So for anyone else listening here in San Diego, body cameras do have a 2-minute buffer, but it's only video and there's no audio. So I was starting to do some research on that. I'm trying to get information from BART. They did have an agreement with the POA that basically said that if that buffer caught anything that was relevant, that officers would not be disciplined for not turning their body camera on early enough, as long as it caught the incident where they encountered a member of the public. So I think theoretically that'd be great for us here in San Diego. I think that would allow us an oversight to be able to see a lot more that sometimes we can't hear. The initial conversations we've had is the police department is a little bit concerned that it's going to increase storage costs. But I told them that as a commission, and we're going to be talking about this in policy committee, as a commission, we're not going to avoid recommending something because of expenses. It's their responsibility to ask city council for additional funds if it's needed. But that was one of the biggest takeaways I heard. And then also with things like reporting of what's mandatory reporting from the department, we're getting information from LA and San Francisco, even Oakland is kind of participating a little bit. Oakland's a little bit of a different story, but those have been actually really helpful. And as I've said in the past, if anyone on the commission would like to participate in those, let me know and I can have you guys added to those meetings. Typically, there's a Southern California regional one that's usually like every 3 months, so usually on a Tuesday morning. And then there's a statewide one that's usually every 2 months, and that date fluctuates. But I said it. Yep, go ahead.
Who is heading those meetings?
The LA one is LAPD's oversight group.
Okay.
And the statewide one is currently being headed by San Francisco's police department oversight. He doesn't want to be leading it all the time. He wants to kind of eventually hand it over so it can kind of rotate among various groups. But he's trying to get everything kind of started on that one. But they're pretty helpful. And as I said, if anyone wants to join, I'm more than happy to get you guys on that list of the distribution email, and you can choose to participate if you want to or not. But they're interesting. They're usually about, the Southern California one's usually about a 2-hour meeting. The statewide one's usually about an hour to an hour and a half.
Thank you.
The update on a CPP joint meeting with CAB. This was about the CPE data study. We've had some initial conversations about it. I think now that there's a new chair, I'm gonna have to restart those with CAB. The idea is we wanted to kind of have a community meeting, kind of get community feedback on that, present what the information is, hear thoughts are. We don't want to just kind of continually go over the exact same issue. We're rather looking to try to find some solutions that we can propose to the department. But once we have a conversation on that, we can extend out to everyone. And then I do see a hand up from our audience, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's Kate, and I'm not sure who's officially hosting, but if you can let Kate speak, that'd be great.
Okay, she can speak now.
Hi, thank you. I actually just put something in chat because I've had my hand up to talk about the transition committee report and got ignored for a while. In the report, there was no discussion of what happened at the city council meeting. And what I'm mostly concerned about is the fact that a new addition was made to the implementation ordinance that has a mandatory exclusion for potential commissioners. That was a brand new mandatory exclusion that there was no notice to the public about, and it brought, I see Doug is putting it on our agenda for the transition committee, but I want to raise it to the entire CPP right now so that you know the concern. This came with 2 of the city council members who brought it after public comment was already closed. So we couldn't even speak against it. And it's a new mandatory exclusion for, quote, anyone who has committed a quote, violent crime, unquote, undefined, against a government official or employee. No time limit, could have been 50 years ago. And, you know, it's mandatory. It's, in my view, it's an absolute outrage. And 3 of the council members voted against it, but it did pass, and it's in the implementation ordinance that's now going to the meet and confer. So what I'm hoping, and maybe we'll have more conversation in the transition committee and bring it back, is that the CPP will take a position against it, like you took a position against the other mandatory inclusions that were actually pretty much removed. And then they threw in this one. So that's what I wanted to comment about tonight. Thank you, Brandon, for noticing.
So, sorry, I know sometimes when I'm going through all my stuff, I don't always see the hands up. So I apologize for not seeing you earlier. Just to add a little bit of color to that, I think the intention of the measure was, and I think this is actually kind of how they stated at the meeting, was, you know, the arson that happened at Fletcher and Gonzalez's office at their house. I think the concern is, although I think it was well intentioned, was that, you know, it's so nebulous as to what a government employee is, that we, and I would say we, people are concerned that it could be, you know, a violent crime against a police officer, when maybe that isn't truly a violent crime if it was just resisting an officer or something like that. So those were some of the discussions that we heard from the public. Just to add, you know, for any members of the commission who haven't watched the transition committee, when we've talked about that, that was one of the concerns that was raised. And with that, I was done with my chair's report. So I will pass it over to Charmaine for the executive director report.
Great, thank you. So let me just start off by thanking each of you for sharing your comments at tonight's lively discussion on the item of backlog of cases. So thank you very much. It really shows the dedication that this commission has to oversight as well as to the community. So again, thank you. I know that most of you are trying, and hopefully we can figure out a plan on how to move forward sooner rather than later. The good news is that, and I know Commissioner Case mentioned that we have at least 110 active cases. No, we do not have 110 active cases, and I'm so thankful that we don't have that large number. We are down to 96 active cases that are assigned to our teams at this point, and that is 1 case less than the number of active cases assigned to the teams last open meeting in February. In this fiscal year that began on July 1st, the commission reviewed and deliberated on and also closed out 79 Category 1 cases, 6 officer-involved shooting cases, 1 in-custody death case, and the commission also audited 14 Category 2 cases and evaluated 65 disciplines. The commission also evaluated 1 shooting review board report. I'll reach out to the technical model just to find out if we will be getting any additional student review board reports. I know we haven't had one of those in a while, so I'll follow up tomorrow. Statistics for the team assignments are as follows. Team 1 has 18 cases in their queue. 12 are Category 1 cases, 3 of which have 1 or more sustained findings, and 6 Category 2 cases. The team has no officer-involved shooting or in-custody death cases. And I have put in the chat earlier how many cases, how many officer-involved shooting and in-custody death cases were assigned to the commission. Team 1, does that sound about correct? Commissioner Vaughn? Is she still here?
Yeah. But there's 6 that are going away because they're Category 2, right?
Okay. Okay, yes, I need to adjust my numbers, so.
and I do, Charmaine, I do prioritize them first to do the sustained findings. And within those, the one that's the oldest, not the ones we got first. And then after we get those done, then within the cases we have left, the same prioritization based on date of incident. So,
okay.
Or date of complaint, I guess it is. So we try to stay ahead.
So Ms. Williamson has her hand raised.
I was actually just saying I was going to let you finish your report, and then we could call on Tasha.
Okay, great, thank you. Team 2 has 1 case in their queue. The case is a Category 1 case with 1 or more sustained findings. So I know Commissioner Holtrop, this is going to be her last month with the commission. So Commissioner Holtrop, if we can touch base tomorrow to find out the status of that case, that would be great.
Yes, I just sent Brandon over an email. Him and I are going to try to get together either here online or in person, because that was one of Joe's cases. We had met with IA. The case is written up and is complete. Since my last day is next week, Brandon would be the one to present it.
Oh no.
So I just wanted to make that note on it, but yes.
I'm in denial. I'm in denial.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate that.
Don't leave us.
Sheila, technically next week for the meeting, you're still on the commission because you said the 31st. So,
a case.
Thank you.
So, Team 3 has 7 cases in their queue. Of the 7 assigned cases, 6 are Category 1 cases, and 1 is a Category 2 case. 1 of the Category 1 cases have 1 or more sustained findings, and the team has no officer-involved shooting or in-custody death cases. Does that sound about correct, Commissioner Workman?
Yeah, of the 7 cases, the Category 2 will go away. That leaves 6. And 4 of them, I have recently completed the write-up, and I'm waiting for the members of the team to review it, and then they'll be ready for presentation. That'll leave only 2.
Okay, and I know I reached out to Commissioner Griffin to find out if she began reviewing cases again, and she said she should have 1 ready by the end of this week. Okay. So Team 4 has 29 cases in their queue. Of the 29 cases, 19 are Category 1 cases, 10 are Category 2 cases, and 2 of the Category 1 cases have sustained findings. Team 4 has 1 shooting review board report to review, evaluate, and no officer-involved shootings or in-custody death cases. The commission as a whole has 2 officer-involved shooting cases and no in-custody death cases. And both officer-involved shooting cases have been assigned to Team 5. Speaking of Team 5,
if I can
Oh, sorry.
On team 4, we turned in the case today, so we now have only 18 category 1 cases left. And I also was going to say, with regard to the motion I made earlier in terms of prioritizing cases, I hopefully it goes without saying that officer involved shooting cases would be given a top priority as well.
Okay, thank you. So team 5 has 13 cases in their queue. Of 13 cases, 7 are category 1 cases, 4 are category 2 cases. And like I mentioned previously, 2 are officer involved shooting cases. The team has no in custody death cases to review. This team has 1 student review board report and a few disciplines to evaluate. So team 5, please check your folder for those disciplines. There was 1 officer involved shooting case that was assigned to team 5 that was already released to the public. CPD released it. So as soon as I get the report from team 5 and well, actually as soon as the commission deliberates on the report and it's closed out, I'll forward it over to SDPD so they can upload it to their website. Team 5, does that sound about correct?
Yes.
Mrs. Clark?
Yes.
Thank you. And team 6 has 28 cases in their queue. Of the 28 cases, 22 cases are category 1. 5 have sustained findings. 7 of the 28 cases are category 2 cases, and the team has no in custody death or officer involved shooting cases. I'm sure team 6 has disciplines to evaluate as well. So team 6, please check your folders. I know Chair Hilpert was actually overseeing team 6. Does that sound about correct?
Yeah, and I know Steve had finished one and we send that one's ready. And then there's 2 cases that I'm reviewing. So those should be ready fairly soon too. But yeah, that's
okay. Correct. So we need to decide also if we should have a meeting next Tuesday. I encourage us having a closed meeting every chance that we get, just due to the backlog of cases. So far we have 3 cases that are ready. One is a team 5, one is team 6, and the other one is team 4. I think I put team 1 by accident, but it's team 4. So we have enough cases, and any of the teams, if you have any cases ready, please have them to me by Thursday, if possible. Are there any cases? Cases. Are there any questions on the case assignments?
I'm going to do commission questions first, if any, and then I'm going to go to Tasha.
Okay.
And I'm not seeing anyone from the commission. So if you can let Tasha speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Yes, it's a concern that I have, but it is regarding a current police involved shooting homicide investigation. People are confused in the community. It's been reported that possibly 1 SDPD officer discharged his gun and 3 sheriff deputies discharged their weapons, killing Dr. Leon Lee in Little Italy. It's my understanding SDPD Homicide Division has conducted the investigation with the FBI and DA to review. Is the CPP going to be able to review this as well? And then I do want to acknowledge that I'll be forwarding over my complaints regarding this shooting no later than Friday.
Okay, yes, the commission will be reviewing that officer involved shooting case.
Thank you very much.
But only for the SDPD officers, not the sheriff's deputies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Case.
And with that, Charmaine, did you have anything else?
Yes, the next item is updates to the CPP website. At last month's meeting, I reported that now we have administrative staff, so we are up in the commission's website. Today's update focused on the history of the CRB and the now commission. So it is coming along. So please let me know if you see anything else on the website that needs to be updated. It is a slow process, so we are making progress. So let me know. So I know the last item I know a few weeks ago, we held meetings with our team leaders as well as members of each team. And I'm getting back into the process of doing those meetings. I'm going to try to, well, I plan to do these meetings at least once a month, just to check in, see how everything's going, see if any of the teams need any help with anything. So please look out for an email from the executive assistant, Alina, to help schedule those meetings. That concludes my report.
Okay, thanks. And I don't see Executive Assistant Chief McGrath here, but I do see Lieutenant Schlowski from IA. Did you have a department update at all for us, or?
Brandon Captain Dupree is here too. If you,
okay.
I don't have anything. Unfortunately, Chief McGrath is not available this evening, but I don't have anything. I'm here to take any questions that I may be able to answer for you, though.
I see Tasha's hand up, but let me go to the commission first. If there's any commissioners that have questions for IA, my guess is probably not. All right, with that, I will kick it over to Tasha.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. So I was inquiring because I noticed on this agenda that it said protest policy. I'm inquiring what that means and what was the protest policy that was going to be talked about at this meeting for this agenda item.
Yeah, so I can actually answer that. So what we've done here is when we, as a commission, make recommendations to the department, we list what those are here until we have an official response from the police department. So you might have hopped on after I talked about it. So at the policy committee meeting, we're going to be bringing the protest policy back. So we had made a recommendation, I think it was like 17 or 19 points. What the department did is they categorized those into 3 different kind of compartments of things they were going to implement, things that they needed to do more research on, and then there was also things that they were not going to implement because either they said it wasn't feasible or it wasn't legal. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring back in policy the protest policy piece to get more clarification on the items that were outstanding, of things that were kind of, they needed to do more research on before they could make a determination. So that's what that was there. The department did give us a response, and we're basically going to be discussing that response for a follow-up. So it's not a new protest policy. It was the protest policy that was implemented after we had recommended it.
And then also, I had several other points regarding number 3, warnings prior to OC usage. What was that?
So yeah, and if you go to our website, there's a page, there's a tab that says recommendations, and you'll see all of our memos. And then when the department has a response, we post their response on the website as well. So typically what we do is as teams go through their cases, if they see things that they think could be done differently or could be done better, they'll usually make a recommendation to the policy committee. And then if the full commission agrees, we'll send a memo asking that the department make some changes. So for that specific one, we wanted the policy to clearly state that prior to officers using OC spray, that they should be giving someone a warning that they were going to use it. And that basically brings it in line with the firearms policy. So for example, the firearms policy says that, officer says, stop or I'll shoot kind of thing. Kind of same thing with OC usage. So we wanted them to basically have to tell someone like, if you don't stop kicking the door, I'm going to pepper spray you kind of a thing. We wanted that warning to be in there. And the department agreed to do that. So that is now part of policy.
So they're going to use OC spray because I find it alarming that during the Denzel Drawn hearing, the officers who were sprayed by the OC spray felt it was harmful to human beings when they were sprayed by it, but not when they spray other people. I'll move along. I wanted to also know about the time limits and maximum restraints due to the $85 million judgment or jury decision that came down recently. For a person who was in maximum restraints. I believe he was hogtied. It's my understanding in San Diego, that the hog ties are no longer being done by law enforcement. I know they're not being done by SDPD, but it appears that in this case in 2015, it was done. And they were, the jury came back with a decision of an $85 million settlement. What kind of maximum restraints is this talking about?
So, and I can email you the memo because these are all things that have already been addressed. The department has essentially either said they either will or will not make those changes. So the maximum restraint is what's also known as the wrap device. So we had made, and I'm trying to see if I can pull it up while we're on here and I can just share it. We had made a recommendation that there should be a time limit that someone's like, I think we were recommending no more than, I think it was like 3 or 4 hours. And to be honest, it's been a while, I don't remember. That was a recommendation that the department said that they would not be implementing. And I'm trying to pull that up right now. Well, here, I'm gonna put the link to this in there, but we did put into the chat. Here we go. But what we do is we put our memos on there. So it's our memos to the city council, it's our memos to the police department, and all of that. But I'm trying to find the one where we had, it was a while ago. Oh, I think here it is. Nope, that wasn't it. Anyway, short answer is the wrap device. We did make a recommendation that there has to be a time limit that you know, if you're in there for more, I think it's like 3 hours, I think was what we recommended. The department said that they would not be adopting that recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
If you look at our memos and then the responses, you should be able to see that. And I'm trying to, I feel like
I just clicked on it, so I'll save it as my favorite so I can review it. Thank you.
But with the exception of the protest policy, all of those were addressed in the memos.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And I think Captain Dupree, I don't believe had anything else. So with that, I will remind everyone that commissioners can do ride-alongs again. If you want to do ride-alongs, send an email with the division you want to possibly do it at, the shift, and send that to Detective Amano.
Hold on a second. I'm looking in the chat. I see it says help from Nancy Vaughn, Commissioner Vaughn. Is she back?
I think it's because she's stuck as an attendee, I think is the issue.
Oh, okay. Let me. No, she
was a second ago.
This Zoom. Where is she at? So are we still waiting for a written response from SCPD? Is that why these items are still on the agenda?
Items 2 to 6, we never got a written response. And so that's the one that I drafted the response based on what their comment was during our open session meeting. But I think we can actually take those off because McGrath did state what they were going to do. And I formalized that in basically a letter that we put up on the website. So I think we can take those off. Let's leave protest policy on. I'm trying to see if, well, yeah, I'm not sure where some of the other things are, but
I'm sorry, do we know that Nancy said help because she was trying to get back in?
I don't know. I was trying to find her on here.
I don't
know. She disappeared again.
Okay, I'm gonna give her a call just to make sure she's okay.
Thank you, Patrick.
I was gonna say, we're almost done. I was gonna try to call her as soon as we're finished as well, but if anyone wants to do ride-alongs, as I was saying, go ahead and email Detective Amato and she can help get those coordinated. And actually Nancy's back in the attendee list again, by the way.
Oh, here she is.
And then with that, I guess we can move on to any announcements or comments from commissioners, if any.
I just talked to Nancy and she's okay. She's just having trouble getting back onto the as a participant. So
that's kind of what I was guessing, but I'm glad you guys saw some of the messages to be able to follow up. And I don't see any hands up for commissioner comments or announcements. So with that, we can adjourn the meeting a full 10 minutes early. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.